It is still the conversation on Lagos television. Before that break, we did say that our focus this morning is going to be on dwindling reading culture in Nigeria. We all know that people shouted, they reacted differently to the just released results of UTME. It was mass failure when you look at the performance of those who wrote that examination. And then there's a very strong link between the performance of this candidate and, of course, reading. People are very disturbed these days that our young ones are not reading anymore. When you read, you expand your knowledge, you expand your analytical mind. But what are the factors responsible for the lack of interest in reading these days? Majority of us are always on our gadgets, checking what is not, checking what is not going to add value to our lives. And we have somebody with us, is joining us via Zoom today. From the background of where he is, you will know that he loves to read a lot. It is my pleasure to welcome to the conversation this morning, Fola Daniel Adelisi is a public speaker, author, and a consultant, and we'll be looking at reviving the reading culture in Nigeria. Fola, it's a pleasure to have you.
Absolutely a pleasure to join you too. Thank you.
Okay, I think the best way to start this morning is to put this question to you. Why do I need to read as an adult or as a young one growing up? Of what benefit is that to me?
As soon as you open your mouth, we can tell the depth of your wisdom. And that doesn't come from the scratches that you get on social media. It comes from the depth hidden within the pages of books. You would understand, especially for those of you who are in the broadcast industry, over the years, some people have confirmed the fact that what actually triggered their interest in broadcast was that they had parents who asked them to read newspapers, and we saw our parents reading newspapers all the time. So some of you improved your reading because your parents insisted you must read the newspapers to them. And I remember the kind of secondary school that I went to, one of the things you had to do was that as an information officer, we had to read newspapers to over 4,000 students on the assembly ground. And as you were reading, your English teachers were listening and pointing out words that you mispronounced. So it became a culture. We also had to go to the library all the time to read. We saw our parents reading. So when you open your mouth, because you have improved your vocabulary over the years, you would definitely say certain things that are not found on social media. I can tell that this person is a reader or this person listens to someone else who reads. So there will always be a difference between you and the person who does not read. It just will stand you out. There's no way you can hide it, and there's no substitute to reading or researching, as it were. So you definitely have to read whether you're young or you are old. There's no option, there's no way around it.
All right, Fola, there's no doubt that the reading culture over here has declined. But now let's look at the factors that has resulted into this.
Okay, there are quite a number of factors. Let's starting with the fact that years back, the parents who used to read to us or who used to force us to read are now more busy looking for money to pay rent, pay school fees, pay for one thing or the other. We're trying to buy fuel, and the cost of fuel is crazy, as you know. So everybody's busy with one thing or the other. Parents are going out early in the morning before their children wake up, and they return when the children have gone to bed. So we're barely seeing ourselves, and that's one of the things that we should pay attention to. I was in that situation at some point, and I know that many people may not have the confidence or the luxury that I had to be able to say, I'm not going to do this to my children. I had to resign a job because before my children woke up, I was out of the house, and by the time I returned, they were already asleep. And that's the reality of many parents. But I stopped that because I didn't want that. But unfortunately, not many can go that route. So yes, we have to find a way to make sure that we're spending time with our children. That's one. And when I listen to my children, I correct them the way they pronounce their words. I remember when people correct me, sometimes I remember who and where I was corrected. So it helps the word to stick longer. Take, for example, the word favorite. Many people still say favorite. And I remember the person who corrected me, and this was way back in 1996. That the person corrected, he almost spanked me for pronouncing it that way. There's another one, the word indict. You would read it and some people would say indict. It was on the assembly ground. My English teacher corrected somebody and said, it's not indict, it is indict. Things like that. So when we don't spend time together, how do you even get to listen to your children pronounce or mispronounce words? So that's one of my favorite pastimes with my children when they're on holidays. I listen to them, they mispronounce words. I'm like, I'm paying heavily for your school fees. You can't pronounce words this way. This is how it is pronounced. And in my heart, I'm like, yeah, I'm being the father that I'm supposed to be. But that aside, spending time together is one of the ways you would notice what you're supposed to notice to start with. Then the other thing is, do they even see you reading anything? There's this general saying that if you actually tell a child to do something and you do something else, children are bad listeners but good imitators. So they will imitate what you do and not what you say. So if you really want a child to do something, you have to lead the way. You can't tell them what to do and be doing something else. They will do exactly what you're doing. So number one is let's spend time with them. Number two is let's show them the way. As an adult, do they ever see you reading anything? And I understand that some parents are not even literate, so we don't expect much from them if they don't have that luxury. But you can pair them up with a mentor. And that's still very, very important. We need to find a way to make sure that if you're not in a position to help your child, somebody else has to be there to help them, to guide them. So those two things will help among several other things. And let's not project materialism. That's the final one I'll stop with. Materialism is one major thing that we're projecting, which will not allow people to study or to focus on reading. And unfortunately, you, my friends and colleagues in the media, are guilty of that. We spend so much time projecting materialism on the airwaves. We spend so much time projecting materialism on social media. And people will tell you school is a scam because there's a guy who is not literate, or there's a guy who didn't even make his wife, and he has a lot of money because he spends time on social media doing all sorts, and people paying so much for that. So those of us who are in the corporate world, who spend so much time reading to become successful, then go back and give somebody a lot of money because he's a so-called influencer on social media. And we're doing that a lot. We're doing it for the musicians. We're doing it so long as anybody has traction, whether they have money, whether they have education or not, whether they have the good morals or not, whether they have the maybe knowledge or anything good to pass across to the younger generation. We don't care. So long as they have the traction to get people to listen to them, all we want to do is to sell our products. So we are projecting materialism to the younger generation. There's no way you project materialism and you expect them to focus on their books.
Okay, Fola, I do agree with you that there are quite a number of distractions out there, calling for the attention of both adults and the youth. So how do we strategize in such a way that will make reading more attractive and, of course, let people see that when you read, you stand to gain a lot?
Okay, the first thing that you should do is to make sure that as a parent, one of the things you're beginning to do is to read. Even if it's just magazine, even if it's maybe a newspaper, whatever, no matter how small it is, begin by reading yourself. Let them see that you're reading. Let them see that you're working. Change what you do yourself. Limit your time spent on your smartphones. Sometimes you see an entire family, adults, young ones. The young ones are carrying tablets all around these days. Sometimes I don't even know how to describe what happens to my heart when I see 4-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds, people under the age of 5 generally already have an iPad, and they carry it around, and the parents are extremely proud that they are able to give an iPad to their children. Now, some people use it as an escape route from the children, so they keep them busy, but unfortunately, while you're keeping them busy to free some time up for yourself, you're actually destroying their lives. You're making them addicts. So you need to make sure that young ones, let's take away the smart devices from the young ones. If they're not up to 13 or probably 15, they have no business owning a smart device. And when they're going to use your smart devices, they should use your smart devices under strict supervision. That's one of the things we need to begin with. My children, and I'll tell you honestly, I've been tempted to give smart devices to my children as something they would own, but I said to myself, not yet. They can use mine when they need to, under strict supervision, but they will not own one yet. So that's one major decision a lot of parents need to make right now. And even the smart devices you have at home, you should control them. Don't let them have unrestricted access to your smart television set. Don't let them have unrestricted access to maybe even a computer at home that is meant for them. Don't let them have unrestricted access to it. We need to work on that. They should use these things to develop themselves. So if you cannot create a regimen that will help them develop themselves, there's no point giving them unrestricted access to these things. Enroll them in book clubs. We were in book clubs. We went to the library all the time. So why are they not doing that anymore? Schools today are being built without libraries. Why will you have a school without a library?
In fact, that was the question I was going to throw to you. That was the question I was going to ask you now, that when you look at the curriculum today, does it promote healthy reading culture? You just said that while you were in school, you used to read the newspaper. Now, I don't think any school does that.
That's a major challenge, and that's one thing that, unfortunately, let's also admit that many of the teachers are overwhelmed, and some of the proprietors who own these schools just see their schools as a business venture. While I understand and I appreciate the need to make money, there's more to owning a school than just money making. A school is never solely to make money. It's more importantly to impact the lives of people. So if you really want to run a school, run it properly. And let's also challenge the people in the Ministry of Education or whoever is in charge of giving approvals to running a school. There's a standard. I know there is a standard, but the states are not upholding the standard. So let's go back to the standard. What should a school have in place before you can approve the school or before you can give them the approval to start running? If they don't have something as basic as a library, they should not be running. They should not be operational. Some of them have been operational for 10 years. They don't even have a playground for the children. They don't have a library. So what do you think they will be doing? They are more vested in clubs these days, and the clubs they are creating are clubs that serve as a tool for extorting the parents and the children. Bring money for this, bring more. You are teaching them taekwondo, you are teaching them table tennis, you are teaching them all sorts of other things that they probably would never use for the rest of their lives. But the book clubs are fast disappearing. Where are the book clubs? Where are the competitions where we did impromptu speeches with intelligent topics? Those are some of the things that we need to bring back. In my school back then, one of the things you had to do is that when you get to SS3, you would deliver a compulsory speech. You can't escape it. We all had student numbers, and the person in charge of the person in charge of the schedule would make sure that everybody in the final year would get on that list. So one morning on the assembly ground, it's your turn. There will be 2 of you or 3 of you in a day. Then the next morning, it's your turn. On Wednesdays, we spoke Yoruba, and you did not have a choice. If they put your name on Wednesday, even if your name is Chukwuamaka or Chukwuebuka or Efosa, you would have to deliver your speech in Yoruba compulsorily. And those were things that put us on the spot. And we did it. We delivered. We became, well, not, of course, you won't have 100% success, but many of us can still not forget those experiences. So there's a part of regulation from state governments or the federal government, because the federal unity schools are not exempted. Many of them are a shadow of what they used to be. We used to hold federal unity schools in high esteem. I can't say the same today. The state governments are not in any way better. They're just like a shadow of themselves as well. So the state government, the federal government, the private schools need to do better. There are only a few schools. And even the private schools, whether in the low end or in the high end area, you go and check them out. There are just people across board who are guilty of all these things. So all of us just need to do better as a whole. But one more thing I should throw in is the lack of proper counseling. Schools, some serious schools used to have guidance counselors. I don't know how many schools have them today. One of the things that helps me,
quickly talking about the JAM results that we're trying to link this to, is that I was smart enough to know that I was very good with some subjects, and I know the subject that would give me issues. So as far as my WAEC was concerned, for example, I wanted to be in the art class. I was forced to go to the commercial class. So when it was time for WAEC, I threw out accounting because I knew that I didn't like it and that it was going to be an issue for me. So I threw out accounting, and thankfully I did that. It was the only subject that would have messed up my WAEC results. And I aced my WAEC result at a sitting without the accounting that would have messed me up. The same thing I did for JAM. When I was going to write my JAM, I looked at all the subjects that, number one, I knew because I wanted to go for mass communication or English or law. I knew the subjects that were appropriate for me. I knew that English was definitely not negotiable. Government was not negotiable.
Literature
was not negotiable. So I asked myself, which other one can I choose? Which was my forte? Yoruba. I was very good with Yoruba when I was in secondary school. So I picked Yoruba, which was my forte, and added it to my subject. And guess what? At a sitting, made over 200 in JAM. Because I had already asked myself, what do I need and which one can I pass effortlessly? Who is talking to these children to tell them this is how to select your subjects in JAM and in WAEC?
Okay, Fola.
This is what you must do.
Okay, Fola, it's always good to know what you want because your case is just like mine. I never liked mathematics, so I'd wanted to study law or mass comm, but my mom was putting pressure on me to study medicine, and I told her point blank, I cannot make it. I cannot make it. So I concentrated on government, literature, economics,
English.
CRK English. And that's why I'm where I am today. So still talking about that UTME results, what do you think happened? Aside from the fact that some of these students, they attended the best of schools, but when you look at their performance in these UTME, it is nothing to write home about. Is it that they are not reading enough, or when they are reading, they get distracted?
Jibola, thank you for that. It takes two to tango, as they say. Have you listened to a secondary school student recently? Have you seen their writings recently? When I say it takes two to tango, what I mean is that it will involve the school and the students. If the school is rigorous, the students will not have time for social media. If the school is rigorous, some of the distractions that they are occupied with will not get in the way. And I saw a statement from my former English teacher as soon as the UTME results came, and I was a bit disturbed because the school where he taught me English, the kind of things he talked about would never happen in that school. So let me now get to the point. The first and the most important thing is who is asking. We used to do a lot of comprehension passages. You read, you respond. How many of that are they doing today, if they are doing it at all? Then we used to do a lot of JAM questions. In our days, when you're preparing for external exams, it was as if the world was coming to an end. You would have so many past questions. You will read a whole lot of them. I want to presume some of them still do, but today some of them rely on miracle centers because the parents are also corporates in this matter, and the schools are also helping out. So that's one challenge on one side. But the more important thing is we need to focus, and there's one secret to passing all exams in an English-speaking country or in any English-speaking country. Work on the English of the students, their speaking and their writing skills. It will affect other subjects. I don't know if you ever experienced this. I found out early enough that if I spoke well and I understood my English, it was going to affect my performance in other subjects. And the day I started focusing on English, I started scoring higher in other subjects. So somebody needs to deliberately, intentionally make sure that these students, through fun activities, are speaking better, learning better, reading better, and they understand better. So if you don't bring all of that, like in my school, we used to have what we call extensive reading. Do you know what extensive reading is? We were all compelled to read a book. And as you're reading that book, you will have an exercise book on the side. Review. When you notice a new word, you would write that new word into the exercise book. Then you would write out the sentence within which it was used by the side, and you would go to the dictionary, look up the meaning of that word, write the meaning in the exercise book, then you will write out your own sentence using that new word. So if you found 100 new words in the new book, you will have to write out all the words, the dictionary meaning, and 100 new sentences with your own words. Who does that today?
I also want you
It's
to
important to make sure.
go ahead.
Okay,
Go ahead. Okay. I also want you to look at the
Yes,
quality. Oh, go ahead.
Let me wait for you.
Okay. I also want you to look at the quality of teaching or the quality of teachers right now. We find ourselves in a society where a lot of people just go into the profession just to earn a living. And so you don't see teachers who are passionate about teaching. Don't you think this is also an issue?
You are, I would say, 95% correct in that regard. And the reason I wouldn't give you the remaining 5% is because the school has a responsibility to make sure that whatever curriculum the state government or the federal government has approved, you as the owner or the manager of the school must make sure that you are following through, you are enforcing it. How it is to be delivered is also totally up to you. It's not just to have teachers who have been employed and are being paid. The question is, what is their delivery mode? How are they impacting your students? You need to make sure that the people, even if they got the job just so that they can have food on their table, there are deliverables, there are methodologies to teaching, there's a strategy to this whole thing. How are you enforcing that in your school system? If you came here because you wanted a job, you must not leave or continue in that school system with the same mindset of just wanting a job. You must love the job by force. And that absolutely depends on the managers of the school administrators, or the proprietors of the school. We let people get into the system. I must agree with you that the entry bar into the school systems is extremely low. We ask that people must have a degree, a certificate, belong to a particular club, a certification and all of that before they become lawyers, before they become engineers, before they become accountants, before they become this or that. But as far as teaching is concerned, all they need is a certificate, and in some cases, they don't even need a certificate. I hope you know that in some schools, it's secondary school graduates that are teaching in those schools, and they've continued like that. So if the entry bar for the teaching profession has become extremely low, what do you expect from the students?
Okay,
we need to watch that. We need to make sure that the best hands teach our students.
Okay, we have said so much about parents and, of course, the student themselves not showing interest in reading. What about government this time around? They give approval for schools. And, of course, I know that we have Professional Teachers Association of Nigeria now, and it is compulsory that as a teacher, you have to register if indeed you want to teach professionally in Nigeria. But you cited earlier that you see some private schools, they are more or less like poultry, and you wonder if indeed some parents are really sending their children to these schools. And because of intellectual complex, some of us, we also find it difficult to speak our mother tongue. And you being able to speak your mother tongue and your ability to read, I'm very certain there's a strong connection between the two. So how do we tell government to do the needful, and of course parents encouraging their children to be able to speak their mother tongue?
Thank you. I hope that you don't get me arrested after my statement or after my answer. So you need to get me security for this answer. So let me tell a story then I'll answer your question. You see, there was this case, I don't remember if it was exactly the Wall of China, but there was a community and they were being disturbed by thieves and all of that. So thieves would make their way into that community. And when they made their way into that community, the people would be distraught after the whole experience because they would have parted away so many things. So they decided to build a wall around the city. And the thieves found out about the plan to build a wall around the city. So they didn't even bother themselves. They allowed the community to build a wall. And when the wall was completely built, what they did was to simply go to the security men, bribe them, and walk through the gates. Why stress ourselves jumping over the fence when we can simply bribe the security man and walk through the gates? So the gatekeepers compromised the community after the plan to secure the entire community using a fence. So they said that it's just a waste of time to be jumping fence, and some of us can even get injured, or some of us can't even jump. Now, that proverb says a lot. And what does it mean? The government has a regulatory role over the people. Unfortunately, it's the government that has colluded with some people to drop the standard, to compromise on the regulatory standard that has been approved by the same government. I want to say the government, I'm talking about people who are employed by the government to make sure that these schools are held to a standard. The question is, how many school owners can say that they have not paid a bribe to get approvals to run their schools? How many school owners are actually doing what is expected of them by the government? And why would they not do what is expected of them by the government? It's because somebody will come from the Ministry of Education or from any of the regulatory agencies as far as the building is concerned or the standards are concerned. And this person will be paid some amount of money and they will look the other way. So there is a problem because somebody in government or somebody in civil service is being paid to look the other way. That's number one. Number two, of course, the person who is paying them is just as wicked as the person who is collecting the money to look away. But what we then need to do is government has to wake up. We can't allow schools to just spring up, come up with different names, come up with different things. And the most important thing they are doing is just to collect money. So that has to come to an end. Then, as far as the leader, that is the governor of the state now, if they see the body language of the governor as being very strict, I think that a number of people will sit up, they will align themselves, and we really need to work on that as well. So let's work on the body language of the governor has to show this interest in this kind of system that we have currently. He needs to show that, look, I will not tolerate anything that is not right. We need to stop all this nonsense. And when the people read the body language of the governor, I think they will sit up, or the president as well, who is in charge of the federal schools. I think people will sit up. So that's very, very important.
Okay.
Because the rules are there already anyway.
Fola, what about the one, the other question that I added to the previous one, your ability to speak your language?
Okay.
How does that affect your reading?
That's fantastic. It's very important. I'll take Wole Soyinka, for example, and some of the people that are famous that we know. You will notice that when they speak their mother tongue, they will speak excellently well. And when they speak English, they will speak excellently well. Now, this is something I have to be careful how I say this. I'm not sure. I hope this doesn't, affect some people. I said to somebody who is Igbo, I said, have you noticed that when you hear someone who is Igbo, for example, who also speaks Yoruba or speaks one other language, and it's the same for any other person, whether you're Yoruba and you speak Igbo or you speak Hausa, people who are able to speak multiple languages, have you noticed that they speak English better and their vocabulary is rich? The reason it helps or it imparts your language is that when you're speaking English, for example, you're speaking from either the Yoruba or the Hausa or the Igbo that you understand. And they all have rich cultural heritage that is reflected in their languages. For example, in Yoruba, we have what we call Ewide. We have what we call Akonluede. The Yorubas will say Owe Leshin Oro, or Leshin Owe, Oroba Sonu, Owe Lafin Wa. And he says so many things. You listen to the lyrics, you are wondering what exactly a Yoruba person can be talking about traffic. At the end of the day, you realize that what he's talking about is not traffic. It only takes a smart person to quickly decode. This person isn't talking about traffic. It's not traffic. So the same thing for the Igbos, for the Hausas. So yes, there's a deep connection with speaking your language, your mother tongue, and speaking English, because you would think in that language. I teach a class of corporate professionals these days, and one of the challenges that we have is that some of them speak French, some of them speak Spanish, some of them speak Portuguese. And when you're teaching them in English, they're first of all trying to process what you're saying
in their language,
Spanish or Portuguese. Exactly. So what we now did was to create manuals for them in those languages so that as you're teaching in English, they understand. So we need to find a way to make sure that people understand and speak unashamedly, speak their mother tongue. There's nothing to be ashamed. Why would you be ashamed of your mother tongue? Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, Ibibio, Efik, whatever language you speak, there's no reason to be ashamed of it. And it helps. It makes you more eloquent. The flowery language that you speak will be a lot better than the other person who doesn't speak any other language. And that's why imagine why were people impressed with somebody like Wole Soyinka speaking at an international conference and saying things like, when I saw the situation, I spoke to my legs and my legs began to cooperate. Of course, you know that in Yoruba, that simply means Mobese Misoro. What is the equivalent? What is the equivalent of Mobese Misoro in English?
I spoke to my
There's no such thing. So when you now translate some of the beautiful things that we have in our mother tongues, then your English becomes more interesting, more fascinating. So it's important for us to learn our mother tongues. And I like what I'm seeing on TikTok, on Instagram with some mothers, Nigerians in diaspora, teaching their children to speak Yoruba and to speak Igbo, giving them cartoons in Yoruba and Igbo, and insisting that they speak their language. Because at the end of the day, they'll become better speakers of the English language. They'll be more eloquent and become better presenters. Absolutely. So yes, it's important to infuse that.
All right, final question from me. Are there tips that you can share for a reluctant reader who wants to turn a new leaf, or for someone who is willing to, become open to reading?
Okay, so if someone is a reluctant reader, first of all, we know that everybody likes money. So start with books that talk about money. Maybe that will keep you reading for a while. Then, as we start with the books that talk about money, then you can go on to other things. But for children generally, there are grades to reading. All these books are also categorized. There are books for people who are teenagers. There are books for adults. There are books for preteens. There are also books for toddlers. So it's important to find out what is age appropriate and give to them. And you'll notice that any book that is age appropriate, there will be words that develop their vocabulary. So somewhere along the line, you find a new word. The children will ask you, what's the meaning of this word? Even if as an adult, you don't know the meaning. Then that's your opportunity to teach the children how to use a dictionary. So you go to the dictionary. In my own days, I read dictionaries. I read dictionary to the point that my classmates no longer looked up any word in the dictionary. They came to me. But today, we don't have that anymore. So that becomes an opportunity to look up a word in the dictionary, show them how it's done. Then they will learn from that. So look for age-appropriate books for your children, and even for you as an adult, read something from time to time. And when we say read something, it doesn't mean read the entire book from cover to cover. You may not have all that time to read the entire book from cover to cover. Sometimes a chapter of a book a day or in 2 days, that's enough to show the example that you want to show to the children and even for you, because you're definitely getting something. And when you ask the children to read, you don't just tell them to read. When I tell my children to read, for example, I tell them to summarize what they read. And if you're talking rubbish, I know you didn't read it. So you're not just going to come and tell me you're not going to cook up stories for me, especially if I read the book myself. So you're going to summarize point by point what you learned. So somewhere along the line, beyond just reading, you're also teaching them to now take notes, listen carefully when they're listening to other people, or pay attention when they are reading. So it's important to show them and to help them. So when you read, come and summarize what you have read. Then you go on to the next thing. But don't give up if you read the first time and you're tired. You can start with the more interesting books. You can start with comics for the children. And for the adults, you can look for something that is not too hard, not too serious. So that's one way to get started. But reading is definitely something you can imbibe. And trust me, even researchers suggest that before we go to bed at night, we should drop all our smart devices and do physical reading with a book instead of your smartphone in front of you before you go to bed.
All right.
Okay, Fola, before we take the next question, we need to go on a very short break now. When we come back, our conversation on reviving the reading culture will sure continue after this short break. All right, we still have with us Fola Daniel Adelisi has been speaking on why we need to encourage our children to read and, of course, expand their knowledge base. But before we let you go this morning, we all know that we are in the age of ICT. It has its own merits and demerits. And some of the books that we have these days, they're in digital form. How do we create that balance in such a way that we don't get carried away with social media and, of course, create another space for us to read books that have been authored digitally now?
It's e-books.
Okay, fantastic question. One of the things that we need to do, as I briefly alluded to earlier, is to make sure that your children do not use your devices unsupervised. That's very important. Number one, unsupervised. Number two, you have to time them. One of the things we do with our children is that once they're asking for the devices to say, oh, I needed to do this, I needed to do that, we give them a time. And once the time elapses, if you don't bring back the tablet or the smartphone, then getting it the next time becomes more difficult for you. So you need to work on, number one, timing them. Number two, making sure that you supervise them or that they use it in your presence. Then the other thing is, you may want to, if you're able to, if you can afford it, get a dedicated tablet for them. There are educational tablets all over that you can get for them. And those educational tablets come pre-installed with some applications that will help your children, regardless of their level. There are some others that you can install certain things on, but you can block those applications. So they are not permitted to download any application. They can only use what is already installed for their academic purposes alone. Another thing that you can do, there's something from Google. I hope that if children are listening, they will not go for my head today. So there is an application from Google that is called like Family Tree or Family Link Tree, something like that. You need to check it out. What it does is that when you have devices that are being used by minors or your children, you can, from your own smart device, link those other smart devices to your own device. And that allows you to monitor every activity on the smart devices that you're giving to your children. So that way, you are sure if they're actually studying or they're spending more time on social media, because you can see everything they're doing from your own smart device, linked to their own smart device, and it's a service from Google. And I think parents should totally explore that option. The other thing is, instead of giving them a smartphone or a tablet or anything, you can also have a computer at home. When I was growing up, of course, we didn't have all these smart devices, but we had computers, desktop computers. What my dad did was to buy me a desktop computer. Until date, I'm forever grateful for that. So if I had a desktop computer, it was difficult even providing internet for the desktop computer in those days. The connection, the process was extremely long. So when you get on your desktop computer, you have to focus on doing the main assignment that you want to do. So if you buy them desktop computers today, there are better desktop computers today that will do exactly the same job of the tablets and stuff like that. They'll be more serious. And the reason I've recommended the desktop computers is that you would hardly be able to install the social media apps on them. And even the ones that can be accessed online, the user experience on the desktop computer is not the same as the user experience when you're using them on smart devices, like the mobile devices. So because of that difference in user experience, the children, the young ones will not really like, or they will not enjoy it. So it's better to let them use the desktop computers for their academic purposes. And that way, you can always study what they are doing. So let's not just give them something as parents as well, and hoping that they will do the needful or that they will be responsible enough with those devices. Let's make sure that there is a form of supervision in place. There has to be a serious supervision in place. So that's one major thing. You just cannot be tired. And your children should not blackmail you into stop supervising them. There are some children who know how to blackmail their parents.
Sure.
Daddy, you're so school. Oh, mommy, your own is too much. Why are you so uptight? No matter the blackmail, you tell them, my job is to be your parents, not to be your friends.
Oh, yeah.
My job is to be your parents, not to, destroy your life. So don't let them blackmail you into having more me time with their tablets or with their iPads and stuff like that, so that they can do whatever they want.
All
Please supervise them.
All right, Fola, because of time, we might need to... Fola? Okay, because of time, we might need to end our conversation now. We thank you very much for your time. Fola has been speaking on the need for us to revive the reading culture in Nigeria. And of course, it puts some blames on government and some on parents, and the need for us to come together as a society to increase the way and manner our young ones read so that they can expand their knowledge base. We thank you very much for your time. Once again, Fola.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay, we need to go now and, of course, link up with our team for the ongoing ministerial press briefing. The press center located within the secretariat in Alausa here. We'll see you again tomorrow at 10. I am Ajibola Ojeshola.
Enjoy the rest of your day. I am Joyolu.